Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us by way of the Witch School International Facebook page. Every weekday Lady Sherry posts a question on this page for discussion among the membership. And earlier this week one of those questions was, can you practice magic with no cost? Now, what Lady Sherry actually meant, as I understand it, was a discussion about charging money for magic. That is not what I'm going to talk about today. So her question only inspires the question I'm going to be dealing with. I understood this question when I first saw it as having reference to that idea that you find in some quarters of the magical community, that magic always has a price. And this is the idea that magic is always some kind of trade-off, that there's always something that must be given up to get something else. And you'll find a number of people who believe this idea, and you'll also find people who believe this about everything in life. And my answer to this idea is that no, I do not agree with that. Now, magic always has a consequence, and anything you do in life will always have a consequence. But a consequence and a cost are not the same thing. Sometimes the consequence may be a cost, but that is not always the case. I think one of the things that is a great problem in the pagan community and the wider magical community as well is a general lack of critical thinking skills. People often will adopt an idea without really looking at it or considering it deeply. The idea that everything in magic has a price or is some sort of trade-off is a very negative idea. And as magical people, we know that where we set our intent has a great effect on what we get back. So if you internalize that idea, well, you will experience it, but that doesn't mean that it's true for everyone. And the consequence of magic will certainly always be there. It can be a small consequence or a great consequence. It can also be a negative consequence or a positive consequence, depending on also very many variables. But it certainly is not always in the nature of a loss. Because in the end, a cost is a loss of some sort. It's giving something up to get something else. And this is by no means the way everything in the world works. Now, yes, of course, magic always takes energy and focus and concentration, but those things are not necessarily a loss. They are not something that you never get back because you've expended them. They are a skill. And I would not regard them as coming under the heading of a cost. And in fact, depending on how you're using energy, you are not even necessarily expending your own energy, but rather shaping the energy of the universe. And so it's not a cost, though of course, as in everything else, there will be a consequence. When you do, for example, a prosperity spell, ideally the consequence will be prosperity. Now, it is certainly the case that sometimes there will be a cost to things that you do magically or in other ways as well. Sometimes this is because you've not really worked out what you're doing properly. Sometimes it's because certain things cannot coexist and one must be given up to get the other. Sometimes it's the time or energy expended, which in some cases could be considered a cost, but not all. So I certainly am not going to say that there is never a cost to magic. On the contrary, there certainly can be. But there is not always, though there is always a consequence, and the difference between these things is actually quite important. And I would stop and think about the consequences of different actions you've taken in your life. And I think you'll find that though all actions have consequences, they don't all carry costs. And to program your mind to think that anything you do is going to carry a cost is really not a good idea. As magical people, again, we know that our belief systems, where we put our focus, has a lot to do with what we get back. And therefore we don't want to have belief systems that impose unnecessary hardships on us. So if you come from the point of view that everything in magic has a cost, I recommend that you stop and think about that point of view and ask yourself if you really actually see that and distinguish it from consequence. Of course, everything has a consequence, but everything does not have a cost. So these are my thoughts on that subject. I hope you find them interesting. And once again, we've come to the end of a week of vlogs. This week has been a short week, and we have only 3 to choose from for the viewer's favorite question. And our first question is Helping the Unhelpable from Ravenwolf. Our second question is Toys from Draconum Blade. And our third question is Cost from Lady Sherry. So please let me know which one is your favorite question of the week. You can vote in the comments section at Magic TV, on Facebook pages where the vlog appears, or you can send it to me at donlewishp@aol.com. I hope you've enjoyed this week's questions, and I'll let you know which was the viewer's favorite question on Monday. And until next time, may you blessed be. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you for Pagans Tonight Radio. Pagans Tonight Radio is an online radio network with different hosts and different shows 7 nights a week. There's something for every taste, including Spanish language programming on Saturday evening. Check out paganstonight.com today. Pray for peace. Pray for love. Pray for stability. Pray for the nation where you live. Pray for the world.